Great. All right. So we've got anger and kindness. We're doing a liver series this morning. And we're going to start in square pose. So square pose, also known as cobbler pose. And we're going to start with the right leg underneath and your left ankle to the outside of your right knee. Now, for some of us, the top knee is really high up. It's not such a gentle posture. So you might not have to do a lot of movement to have a lot of feels there. One good thing to do if you're feeling really kind of stuck in it is you can sit on a block or a rolled up blanket to lift your hips. And then everybody you slide your butt cheeks back a little bit. And then start to slowly drop your head. This is particularly intense this morning. So maybe we won't stay there for 5 minutes. You want to have both your legs parallel. So from the aerial view, you should have your legs stacked like logs in a log cabin. It is tricky and it's not so nice feeling. So drop your head. Don't do too much. Let your elbows be heavy. Close your eyes and just actually take this first breath and really breathe in the smarting, the pain, how it hurts. And with your exhale, breathe out what you want to see a little bit more of, what you want to feel a little bit more. So maybe softness or release. No, you want to start to drop at least your chin. So notice the intensity. And instead of trying to push through it, try to be gentle with it. Now, I'll tell you, my dear warrior friends, this is the hardest training for us. So don't force yourself too deep. See where it can be soft, where it can be gentle, even when it's full of a lot of sensation. Take your attention to the rest of your being and your body. And just notice how you are this morning. With your eyes closed, picture a starry night. Notice that you can imagine all of these stars, even planets, and you don't need to know what their names are or exactly how far away they are. And you can still imagine it. Have a full picture. You might even imagine a breeze hitting your cheek. And in your own way, imagine your relationship to all of those stars in your imagination. And with your inhale, roll up, and you're going to wiggle your top knee, your left knee more over your right knee. And just as a little interlude and help to get into the position, come up onto your knees and wiggle your knees in closer. After the square pose, this doesn't feel quite as brutal, perhaps, maybe just a little brutal, mini meanness. Okay. And then again, lift up your chest and so you start upright, take an inhale, and then bring your chin to your chest. And some of us will start to bring our foreheads down to our knees. Some of us will just put our chin in front of our knee. Others of us will actually put our chest onto our knee. If it's too much, you can also extend your bottom leg straight. And there's like really no shame. It's just a yin yoga posture. But even here, we tend to make up stories. Now, whether you have a clear structure of belief or not about how you, this particular specific being of you, came to be here on earth. But just as an imagination, imagine that you had to travel through all of those stars. You can even imagine seeing the other side of the sun. And there was a part of you that traveled all the way through all of these stars, past all of these planets, to come here to Earth. This living, breathing planet. With all its complexities and intricacies. So many animals, lots of which we can name, most of which we can't. I never thought that I'd still be learning the names of new animals I didn't know existed as a child, as a 40-something-year-old. And then inhale up. Happy we're not staying there for the whole 5 minutes. Yay, small victories. And then it doesn't get better. Take your top leg back. And you might even take your right knee a little bit more to the right of your right hip. We're moving into sleeping swan. So either you can put something underneath your right buttocks if it's in the air, or you can roll a little bit onto it and bend your left knee, but then you just start to walk your hands forward. Letting your, you can bend your knee that way. So it makes your hip open, but then you can kind of settle over your right hip more. There's different ways to, support the posture if your body's not fully open yet. And sometimes in the morning, we're not fully open, when in the afternoon we can do, full splits and whatnot. So the front leg, depending on how flexible you are, You always want to think the closer you bring your feet to your spine, the middle section of your body, the gentler it is. So if it's not intense enough for you, you're welcome to open up your right shin more parallel to the top of your yoga mat. So in your imagination, you've sailed to the stars and you've come to this beautiful planet, and you even found a very specific place and a specific womb to aim towards and to incarnate in. And just again in our imagination, traveling through those stars, those points of light, those formative rays. And then you come into this the belly, the womb, the uterus of a woman. And the fetus starts to grow. Equally in complexity to the earth that we're incarnating onto. We share the minerals in our bones, in our blood, in our eyes, and our ears, the crystals. We share the flow of water through our body in all sorts of different liquids. Already in the womb, we are warm. And if we think about traveling through the stars, traveling into this body, it's the first time that we've really experienced warmth. And when you study the growth of a fetus, you can see that a lot of complexity comes quite rapidly. And there's a lot we can observe, but I imagine there's even more we can't observe. And then start to walk your hands back towards your shoulders, lift up your chest, and you're going to roll onto your right butt cheek. And you're going to come into a forward bend. So your hips are coming straight forward. You're just bowing. So you have, it's like half butterfly. So your right heel is still bent, your left leg long. And so maybe come down to your elbows, maybe just lie on the floor. It's not a posture we do that often. It can be half dragonfly, half butterfly. Mm-hmm. And thank goodness I always joke about this. Thank goodness we don't give birth to middle-aged people, but we give birth to these beautiful, kind of pristine, unmarked babies. And so our complexity is not finished growing and completing even at birth. And before we're even done growing, we start to make sounds, mimicking the noises we hear around us. One can imagine, as you can see, nearly the difference in like people who've grown up with different languages, like how the shape of a language helps to shape your whole face, all of your expressions. And before we're done growing, we actually have to learn to do such dramatic things like first lift up our head, roll onto our back. Sorry, you guys confused it. Okay. I was talking about babies, but we might as well go. Okay, lift up your head. Don't roll on your back, but instead twist just back and forth a couple times. And then bow over your extended leg. Noticing that your right shoulder doesn't really want to participate and maybe can soften your shoulder down. And then as young babies, toddlers, small children, you can watch them go through these growth trials, you know, whether it's falling down a step that's too big or falling off of your high chair, or there's usually a definite dramatic accidents marks the incarnation into these human bodies. And with the fall, the child learns. You know, it's totally normal for an infant to have those moments where they step down a step that's too big and they fall down on their face. It's horrible, it's dramatic. But you'll notice they don't do it every time. They learn. And as they experiment with their physical body starts grows. And through different pictures, we know that, you know, the biggest spurt of physical development is from like 0 to 7. And while the body continues to grow and mature, the young person then also starts to grow and develop their body, sometimes referred to as their water body or their pranamaya kosha or their etheric body. And this is the body that feels warmth and cold, light and dark. And you can imagine it being affected the same way we affect water. So now in this wonderful age, we have so many different paths that science has led us. And one of them is how sensitive water is to what's around it. And then inhale up and bring your left knee in, hug your right knee up, and just drop your head here. Maybe rock yourself back and forth a little bit. You might have been on tense on this side. And let's see if we can actually welcome the intensity on the other side. Excuse me. And you're gonna come into, you probably want to stretch your legs out and just shake them out a little bit. A vibrating interlude. Just shake. Mm-hmm. Maybe wiggle. Jiggle. Okay. And then we're gonna come first into square pose. So, yes, go Frida. So you take your right ankle. Yes, we did it this way, right? Your right ankle to the outside of your left knee. You want to open up your left shin so it's parallel with the top of your yoga mat. Your right knee might be really high up there. Again, if it feels like you have to break things to move forward at all, not cool. In an emergency situation, you can extend your left leg. It doesn't have to be an emergency situation. Don't have to be so dramatic. But if you need to, extend your left leg. And then take your hands by your hips and just slide your butt cheeks back. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like a shift of your pelvis, Camila. Yeah? She's like, don't talk to me, I'm asleep. And then bow down. Let your chin come to your chest. Take a full breath in with your exhale, sigh out. One of the hardest things is actually to slide your right leg far enough to the left so that your ankle's on the outside of your knee, if you can. So just a little side tangent here. You know, I was really interested in astrology when I was a kid, teenager. And then I kind of left it and I didn't really study it. I kind of liked some elements of it, but I didn't study it so deeply. And just recently, I've delved a little bit more into it again. And I heard this really elegant description of how the degrees are and how planets relate to each other and to us. And this, every time that there's a square, it's marked by two planets being by a 90-degree angle from one another. And square is always about conflict and opposition. And we can feel this in this square pose, quite literally. It's a hard pose. But you want to softly come towards it. You can't beat your way through conflict. This is what we've tried to do for eons. And it's solved nothing. So how can we actually feel this opposition in ourselves and have this moment be a small practice of being gentle in our conflicts? You'll notice that it requires your presence more than actually pushing and beating at something. So in our becoming, in the picture, the esoteric picture of child development, human development, these are rough numbers, but it's about approximately different for everyone, like snowflakes. But from 7 to 14, the real focus is actually on building this etheric body. And we are still so in the dark about this invisible body because of our fixation on our physical body. And then inhale, lift up your head and your chest and bring your right knee more over and bring your left knee in. And just to feel a little bit more, I don't know, better, come up onto your knees and like wiggle your knees together. Give your knees a cuddle. And then sit your hips back down. This time your feet are kind of sticking out from your hips like little ears. And then lift up your chest and start to roll down. If you need to extend your bottom leg, feel free. Now, while the etheric body is so foreign in mainstream vernacular, or this importance of warmth and how light is, just notice, just imagine, for instance, the way you feel different if you're under fluorescent lights standing on concrete. And I hope you've had to actually work a whole day in that environment just to know what a dramatic, huge energy suck it is. Or compare the difference of lighting being in candlelight or around a fire. Or how different it is to stand on the earth rather than concrete. This, where you feel those differences, this is part of your etheric body. So from 14 to 21, there is this emphasis and growth spurt in our astral body. And you can think of this as our body of desires and goals and dreams and the intellectual mind. And so for most of us, that's what's the focus for our high school education. And only then is it really time for the ego to be developed after 21. That the ego comes into you. Now, of course, as a child of like 2.5 or 3, you start to be very aware of me, of I. And you would laugh if you tried to explain why a 9-year-old doesn't have an ego because they have such a strong personality, some more than others. But this idea of the ego incarnating isn't just like this experience of being separate from other people. That's already part of what you experience as growing up. But it's really this maturation that's possible of not just being selfish and self-aware, but actually being able to move through these precious gifts that are available to us by us becoming ourselves. And then inhale, roll up your chest. See if you can still move your toes, and then sweep your right leg back and transition into sleeping swan. So especially if you're in the privacy of your own home, moan and groan and make weird noises. It's okay to have feels. We want to, remember, toxins feel like great going in, horrible going out. We got systems for this. So maybe you love it, maybe you hate it, but how can you come into this posture with a kindness, with a gentleness, with a softness that doesn't belie? It doesn't mean that you're not suffering. Now, as full ripened adults, um, just kidding, we still have some ripening to do, some maturing to do, I believe. But we notice this evolution. This growth, part of which has happened physically, but a lot of which has happened in so many complex ways that we know intimately, yet are so quick to dismiss because it's not physical, or we don't have a paper from somebody else telling us that we have these capacities. And so often we've grown up with these ideas that human nature is always a negative thing. Oh, it's human nature to be greedy. It's human nature to want, just the best for you and your family. It's human nature to grab for power, to use whatever power you have. But for me, that is such a small and unmatured part of what is our nature. And part of where we are in the world right now is we're in this time where if you stop most people on the street, they don't want to go to war. We do not inherently want to be fighting We don't actually feel good when we're mean. I mean, sure, maybe when we're angry and just delivering that zinger, that line that just totally cuts to the quick, in that moment might feel temporarily good, but unfortunately, it lingers with you and festers. And where, the argument might have felt good on one level, if it was just about being mean, it usually, it like kills the roots, poisons the roots. It often, even without physical injury, we're so skilled at harming others. But it turns out that actually lying to somebody, it's pretty easy. It's so easy, as a matter of fact, we have a whole economic system based on it. Oh, wait, sorry, I go too fast. But we have a whole level actually of social acceptance around it. I remember one of my best friends, we had this huge argument about pacifism. Because he was like, "Yes, I'm a pacifist, except for when it comes to issues about World War II, or except for racists." It's a little bit like saying, "Yes, I'm a pacifist, except for with my enemies." And then start to walk your hands back towards you, moan and groan, cry a little if you need to, and then roll onto your left butt cheeks, both butt cheeks actually, and come straight down the middle. We don't do this posture often. So you can, for some of us, your heel is nearly going to be kind of like pushing into your belly. Half butterfly, half dragonfly. In the the practice, the history we carry of war and conflict, we have found many convenient ways to justify dominance or power or lies or however it is that we fight. And the tactics are they haven't changed that much over the years. There's some very like key basic tactics that are still being utilized. And it is this push to dehumanize and otherize whatever it is we're fighting against. Now, you can think of different world wars. World War One, two, or the one we're in right now, World War Three, just a theory. Or you can also start to notice that we start to employ the same tactics when we do something, when we start to fight against terrorism or fight against drugs or fight against poverty. And we start to even notice that we will bring these same tactics into our personal relationships. If someone is makes us uncomfortable, we don't like the way they think or the way what they're talking about, we try to make them more just that thing. We rob them of their complexity. We bring them down to just the fundamental thing that we don't like. And when we bring it down to such a simplified thing, it's much easier to abdicate or to reject and push away who they are, who we are. And then inhale, lift up your chest and do a little jig, a little sitting dance. Oh, I kind of like it. Maybe add the raccoon hands or the smither hands. We're a serious topic. We need a little comedy break. Or maybe it's like bye bye birdie. And then turn towards your beautiful extended leg and bow over your gorgeous right leg. Now, what's horrible, or it's all horrible, but what's ridiculous is we start to employ these same war tactics when it comes to ourselves. You know, can't fight them, join them, right? Where okay, let's take something like you feel like you're too fat or too skinny. And you actually have this othering of your body, of yourself. Look at this horrible thing that's happening to you. You need to fight against this. Or if we are suffering an illness or a sickness, we try to isolate and find that one cause. We're so unpracticed at recognizing how materialism has slipped in to the very like center of how we think about anything. This is part of the impulse to make what's wrong with us just be the cause of one thing. This is the fundamentalism. This is the bringing it down, oversimplifying it, trying to just find the polar situation instead of the complex situation. I've been interviewing monsters lately. The sirens informed me that they were just doing their jobs. And the Hydra tell me she still doesn't know what she did wrong. The Stymphalean birds said they only wanted to protect where they belonged. It is a worrying thought that the monsters may actually have been heroically fighting to protect what's theirs from invaders and against all odds. That we may need monsters. What else will ever help us make sense of the gods? And then inhale, roll up and wiggle around, do a little dance, whatever you need to, moan, grow, cry, and then find your way into Sphinx. Very simple. For a lot of us, not so painful or dramatic. You might notice nuances. For me, I have this very weird thing often, especially if I do it as my first posture in my practice. I always feel when I come into Sphinx like someone's putting like earmuffs. Earmuffs. It's what my brother says when he wants to say something adult and the kids shouldn't listen. Earmuffs. But no, take your earmuffs off. You all adults here. So find the passiveness of your pose. Feel the solidness of the ground support you. So you might have been hearing these crazy expressions like, we are the people we've been waiting for. Or here's another radical one. In this revolution, no one gets left behind. Huh? Or that you've heard this one, I'm sure. We're going through a paradigm shift. Now, first of all, just such a pleasure in geeky land for us intellectuals over here to talk about the paradigm shift. It sounds big and important. I must have something to say about it. But what's so crazy is each one of us is going through a shift, and it's not this thing from the outside that's happening to us, but instead it's our inner world having to make its way and to be born out into our outer life that we share in community. And it feels like a baby. How easy it is to dismiss as you know what you do with baby, or some people, where this idea is, oh, but they don't understand what I'm saying. I can talk about horrible things in front of them or while they're in my womb. They don't understand. So equally, we kind of dismiss like this beautiful future we know is possible because it's alive in our drives and our dreams, in our imagination, and even in our personal relationships already. That it's not naive in lacking complexity, it's naive in its infancy, which is a very different kind of naivete. And it's ready to be born. So one of the ultimate kindnesses is actually to be yourself so this birth process can happen in the world. So that your honest lived life is building and helping grow this idea of being able to live not without conflict, but with peaceful conflict. To live in a way that isn't against our bodies or ourselves or each other. To actually transform our systems so they're not exploitive systems anymore. You know, if we keep the systems we have now and still try to lift up, you know, feminists and people who are doing the really important work of anti-racism and social work, marginalized poor people, like it doesn't solve anything to put them, as our friend Charles Eisenstein and joked about, like you don't want to like just raise up the people who've been exploited and put them as the head of this war-making killing machine. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to lift someone up to put them in a position to just become the exploiter. That's not progress. And then slowly start to lower yourself down to the yoga mat. You can already, if you want, roll over and roll around on your back. We're just going to do a cleansing twist before we rest in our Shavasana. So if I was there, I'd probably roll onto my back, hug my knees to my chest, roll about 180 degrees. I am a mineral, so that I can start the class in the right, end the class in the position I started in, so to speak, with my head going the same direction of my feet. And so end up on your back, hug your knees to your chest, and just let's do a cleansing twist. So both knees drop first to your left. You can take a full inhale, and with your exhale, just sigh out. And then roll back to center and let both of your knees drop to the right. Again, take a beautiful cleansing breath. So to loop our conversation back to the liver, when our liver is healthy and well and cared for, it helps support our kindness, our capacity to meet the complexity of every moment, of every human, of every situation, with kindness as our force instead of power, instead of might. And then hug your knees back to center, stretch your body long. Moving into Shavasana. I have a blanket for you too, Frida, if you'd like. Feel the ground hold you. With your next inhale, invite your beautiful breath to the edges of your body. Wiggle your fingers and your toes. Smile that smile that only you got. And then roll onto your side, hugging your knees to your chest. And just feel for a moment your vibrancy and your source. And then help yourself up into a comfortable seated position. Allow your hands to meet at heart center. Feel the earth below you, lift up your chest, lengthen your spine, and empty your breath. Take a deep inhale. Bring your prayer hands to your third eye. Invite the divine light. And as we bow forward together, we say, Namaste. 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 And so much love. Woo, 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 woo. That's good. Woo, 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 woo. Also, I forgot to say, I forgot to say that the poem I read, Monsters Mine, is by Nikita Gill. And she's two radical things: female and alive and a poet. So check her out. She's really cool. Thank you.